What if the way that you're trying to be confident is actually holding you back? Because these are the 5 confidence mistakes that I made, and honestly, they held me back for years. They're patterns I saw in myself for over 10 years, and when I finally got tired, I started reading dozens of books and research papers on confidence to only find out that maximum number of people make these 5 confidence mistakes. And even if one of these is something that you're doing, it could be the reason why confidence still feels so out of reach. And I obviously don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did, so I will also tell you how I overcame them. So let's get into it. Mistake number 1 is that you're addicted to external validation. Let me ask you this. Do you only feel confident when someone else tells you that you're doing good enough? Because that also used to be me, and for so long, I didn't even realize it. I relied so much on likes, compliments, and anything that told me that you're good enough. But the truth is that when your confidence relies on external validation, it is never really truly yours. It's actually borrowed, and once the compliments stop coming in, it vanishes. In research, this is called contingent self-esteem, and research reveals that it is actually linked to higher anxiety, emotional burnout, and low resilience. And honestly, I felt all of that. I'd often obsess over how my videos were doing, and one negative comment would really wreck and ruin my whole day. Even during wins, it was mostly like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was like confidence had an expiry date and something that was always out of my reach. Because when confidence lives in someone else's opinion, your emotional stability also goes with it. But here's what helped me shift it, and this is something you can try too. After any task, ask yourself, am I proud of how I showed up? Don't ask, was I perfect or did they like it? Just think about, did I show up as me or not? And this question honestly changed a lot for me because I stopped seeking validation from someone else and started validating my own effort. Sometimes it looked like journaling my thoughts and sometimes sending myself a simple voice note. But over time, my brain stopped seeking reassurance and instead started creating internal safety. But once you start doing this, something really interesting also happens, which is that you start noticing patterns in your own thoughts. And if you're low in confidence, it is most often than not thinking about the worst case scenario. Which brings me to the second mistake that I made for my confidence, and maybe you're making that mistake too. Mistake number 2, you're hooked on worst case thinking. Okay, be honest with me. How many times have you imagined something going terribly wrong before it even happened, and then justified it by saying that you were just being realistic? I used to do this constantly, whether it was before sending an email, a presentation, or even posting a video. My brain would literally run a whole trader of what could go wrong, whether it would be failure, embarrassment, or some mistake that I would make. And I really thought that I was being prepared, but in reality, I was actually rehearsing pain. Research calls it anticipatory anxiety, and Baumeister's study on why bad is stronger than good explains why. So basically, our brains are wired to notice danger more than possibility because it wants to protect us. But when that protective instinct gets unchecked for very long, it actually becomes a loop and a habit. So basically, I wasn't staying safe, I was actually feeling stuck. And this kind of overthinking doesn't build resilience or confidence. It actually leads to self-doubt dressed as preparation. And as a result, we procrastinate more and we also avoid the real reason why we're not feeling confident. And the scariest part is that it starts becoming your new normal, and you start believing that worrying is actually thinking and spiraling is actually safety. But here's a very simple question that I practiced again and again that also helped me shift this mindset, which is, what if it all goes right? Every time I caught myself thinking the worst case scenario, I actually wrote down 2 versions of the same story. One where things actually fall apart, and the other where things start to go in the right direction. So I didn't really want to be delusional, but I just wanted to balance out my brain. Because when you actually start imagining success, your nervous system also resets to believe that it is possible. And that alone makes the action feel much safer. But when I started doing this, like really doing this, something even deeper came up. It wasn't just the failure that I feared, but also the feeling that would come up if it happened. The embarrassment, the shame, or the heartbreak. And that brings us to mistake number 3, and this one's really big. You're not just afraid of things going wrong, but also afraid of the feeling of when it happens. So mistake number 3 is that you're afraid to feel afraid. So you've imagined the worst case scenario, but what happens when even just thinking about it makes you shut down? And this is where most of us get stuck, not because we can't do the thing, but because we want to avoid the feeling that comes with it. And in research, this is called experiential avoidance. The urge to avoid uncomfortable emotions, even if that means that you're shrinking your life. For example, I avoided public speaking, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to avoid feeling anxious. I used to feel really scared of speaking up. So I just stayed quiet. I avoided the discomfort and called it being chill. But here's what no one tells you. Avoiding fear doesn't build confidence. It actually builds a life which is much smaller than your potential. Confidence actually grows when you build a tolerance for discomfort, when you show your brain that this fear won't break you. And one simple way to do that is to actually start with low stakes discomfort. For example, start speaking up in a casual conversation. You can also record a video and maybe not post it for now. Basically, start trying something before you feel completely ready. And when fear shows up, just tell yourself, this is temporary, this is not dangerous, this can be there, and I can still move on and do those things. That's when you start to unhook yourself from the avoidance trap and actually start doing things before it feels flawless. Which also brings me to mistake number 4, and this is something that I honestly see everywhere. Mistake number 4 is that you've tied your confidence to perfection. Again, be honest with me and tell me if this sounds familiar. I'll be confident when I'm flawless. This is actually one of the most common mistakes, but the hardest one to spot. It is actually tied to a belief that confidence is something that you earn and that you become confident when you fix everything that is wrong about you. And research calls it conditional self-worth. The idea that you're only good enough if you meet certain standards that you've set up for yourself. For me, those conditions looked something like this. If I lose weight, I'll finally feel attractive. If I speak perfectly, maybe I'll be good enough to be heard. And if I get clear skin, maybe I'll be worthy of being seen. And the funniest and the hardest part is that even when I was so close of doing those things, I still didn't feel confident. Because the standard and the bar that I set for myself kept moving. There was always another flaw, another comparison, another reason to keep waiting to feel confident. But here's the thing. Perfectionism doesn't build confidence. It actually keeps pushing it out of reach. And while chasing perfectionism might feel motivating at first, it eventually does become exhausting. Because think about it, if confidence is something that you're always chasing, it's never something that you already own. So how do you then shift it? You shift it by showing up before you even feel perfect. So you post that thing, you wear that outfit, and you speak up even when it's really uncomfortable. And you remind yourself that I can be seen while still becoming. Because you don't need to earn confidence, you need to build it right here, just as you are. But when you start doing this, there's something else that can also quietly sneak in between your progress. And that brings me to mistake number 5, which is that you compare yourself to everyone else's highlights. And let me be very honest with you, this one completely destroyed my confidence for years, and not gonna lie, it sometimes still does. You could be making real progress, but the moment you scroll past someone's perfect morning, perfect skin, perfect life, you suddenly feel like you're behind in life. And you constantly compare your life to them. You could be having a really good day, feeling okay in your skin, being proud of how far you've come, and then you open Instagram. Suddenly someone else's glow up makes you question your own, their routine makes you feel like you're lazy, and someone else's face, body, success, lifestyle makes you feel like your reality is really, really small. But that's not you failing, that's actually your nervous system reacting to overstimulation. So comparison is actually very human, but social media has turned it into a self-attack. And social comparison theory actually explains that we naturally evaluate ourselves to others to understand our place in the world. But when the others that we are comparing ourselves to are perfectly curated, highly filtered, and also algorithmically promoted, your brain starts believing that that's the new normal. But here's the thing. You're comparing your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. And unfortunately, your brain doesn't know the difference. I used to follow creators that had the glowy skin, the perfect aesthetic house, and the perfect pacing, and honestly that made me go into a spiral. I started to cultivate this feeling inside of not enoughness. Like my life was too messy, too late, or too ordinary. I'd post something that I worked really hard on and then automatically delete it because I thought that there was something that was wrong with it. I'd also avoid filming on days where I didn't feel pretty enough. And deep down, I also eventually started to believe that maybe I'm not made for this. But the truth is that I wasn't uninspired. It was that I was very overstimulated. And no one ever thrives in a comparison mode. So what helped me actually shift this? I did what I call a compassionate digital reset. I actually muted and unfollowed accounts that made me feel like I was behind in my life. Not because they did anything wrong, but because my brain needed some space to breathe. And then I started intentionally following people that felt more human to me. People who shared their wins, but also their softness and the non-linear growth as well. And these were creators that reminded me that life didn't have to be perfect or aesthetic all the time to be meaningful. And what this led to was that I started eventually feeling that my life was also enough, not perfect, but very real. Because honestly, comparison is not also just about logging off, but also rebuilding a relationship with your own life. And when you stop measuring your life against someone else's best moments, you finally make room for your own becoming. So these were the 5 confidence mistakes that I made in my own journey. And hey, if you also found yourself to be in all 5 of them, don't worry, because so did I. And that's why we're actually here, not to be perfect, but to actually grow through it all. And I know that we've covered a lot in this video, so here's a quick recap of the 5 mistakes that I made in my confidence journey. Number 1, I relied on external validation and let others' opinions of me drive my own self-worth. Number 2, I spiraled into worst case thinking and often called it being prepared. Number 3, I avoided the feeling of fear, not the task itself, but the discomfort that I thought the task would bring. Number 4, I waited until I felt perfect to show up. I often thought that confidence was something that had to be earned and not built through messy action. And number 5, I compared my life to someone else's highlight reel, forgetting that real life is not filtered and confidence is not built by measuring your life against someone else's. And now if you're wondering that yes, I do make these mistakes and there are a lot of times where I don't feel pretty enough or good enough, I've got another video for you that goes deeper into this exact question. It's called Why You Don't Feel Pretty Enough, and I think it'll really shift something in you. It's linked below in the description and here as well. And if you found this video helpful, consider hitting that subscribe button. And remember that you're not behind in life. I'm really proud of you, and I'll see you in the next video.